Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and when it comes to this brewery, if people were to ask me about them, I would say that they're just very solid all round. They like to try lots of different things, and in my experience, they always tend to be pretty solid actually. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a little bit of a special one for them. It's a style that I think we've had from them once before, if memory serves me correctly. I've certainly not had more than one of these from this brewery actually. But yeah, it's a style I very much enjoy, one that I've been getting quite into again in recent times, and it is supposed to be a really nice one. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we review the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review, we are going to return to Beerbliotek. So this particular beer is called To the Nines. It comes in at 13% ABV, and this one is a barley wine that they brewed for their 9th anniversary. It's recipe number 326 in the Beerbliotek recipe library, if we can call it that, and this was released as part of the Lokalt Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for January of 2023. So yeah, this should be pretty nice. But yeah, we've had many styles from Beerbliotek over the years. I think the last one we reviewed from these guys was a New England IPA, which was really quite nicely done. And before that, it was a Pilsner, which I also quite enjoyed. So yeah, first time I've had a barley wine from these guys in a couple of years, if memory serves me right. So this should be quite nice, and always cool to review an anniversary beer from them as well. But let's crack on and see what this one is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Beerbliotek before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. Simply go to the search bar, type in your hometown, state, county, prefecture, whatever. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should appear. Otherwise, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist, and of course that will be added to again over the next while, and there's lots more playlists from other countries as well that you can check out too. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and we'll chat again about Beerbliotek. So Beerbliotek, as I've told you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded back in 2013 by a multinational group of friends. So this is Adam Norman, who's from Australia, Richard Bull, who's from New Zealand, a Kiwi, Anders Hedlund, who is Swedish, and then Darl de Necker, who's from South Africa. So Adam and Richard ran Bar Doppio in Gothenburg, and they've been homebrewing together from about 2011, whereas Darl and Anders were regular customers at the bar, and they often just used to talk about beer, you know, different breweries, different beer styles, hops and things like that and so on. But Darryl joined in with the home brewing, and then in 2012 Anders joined in as well, and they decided to go commercial at this point once they had the four of them together. So they got together, they got out their first brewery, and the original facility was in the old Klippan Sugar building, which was a really nice old building very close to the old Carnegie Brewery, which is quite a well-known facility up in Gothenburg. But the original brew kit they had was from Brewfab in Scotland, and in their first year they apparently brewed 38 different varieties of beer. But all of their beers are still brewed in fairly small batches, so this means they kind of stick to their home brewing roots, and they very rarely brew the same beer. They've got no fixed range, although it is worth saying that there are a number of beers that are quite popular, and they make appearances fairly regularly, to be honest with you. So yeah, you can get some of your favourite beers from these guys. Eternal Darkness, Eternal Dankness are two that come to mind. A Passion for Gingers is one that you'll quite often see, and there are a few of the pale ales and things that are regular too. The Premium Pilsner, I think, is going to be a regular one as well. But in 2015, they opened up a second brewery in Kungston, where they have their tap room and now run their main brewing operations. They brewed sour beers for a period of time in the old brewery, and they began working on a barrel aging project as well when they moved into the new brewery. But over the years, they've continued to develop different recipes and expanded the company. In 2018, Fabian and Victor Hilte joined the company as investors, and then in 2022, they were joined by Palle Stenberg, who runs the Nudie Jeans brand. But the current brewmaster at Beerbliotek is the Italian Riccardo Boff. He studied brewing and distilling at Heriot Watt in Edinburgh, and he worked for Pilot Brewery in Scotland, Kramer Lee in Korea, and then he came to Gothenburg to work for Beerbliotek. But he joined Beerbliotek in 2020, and in early 2021, Beerbliotek purchased a 750 litre distillery, and they started a spirits company which is called Wet City, and they released their gins via Systembolaget in August of 2022, I think it was, or August of 2021. I'm not quite sure about that. But that's been going very well for them. The idea behind the name Beerbliotek is that these guys wanted to brew a wide variety of beers so that the customers can always learn something new, you know, about a new hop, a new type of malt, or a new yeast, or even just a new style of beer, something like that. But they basically want to be a library of beer, hence the name Beerbliotek. Biblioteca, I think was how you said it in Latin, and that's where it's derived from. And we use that word in Swedish as well, bibliotek, which will be derived from Latin, of course. But as of January 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 330 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd, and they will no doubt continue to increase that number over 2023. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Beerbliotek for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, I do need to get up there and actually go and visit the brewery and do an out and about video. I need to get up to Gothenburg and film at a few places, come to think of it. So definitely something we need to try and do over 2023 now that everything is nice and opened up. But yeah, let's crack on and have a wee look at the beer itself. So this one, as you can see, is a 330 milliliter can. I actually forget how much I paid for this one. I want to say this was 70 Swedish kroner, so that's about €7, somewhere in the region of like £6 sterling and maybe about $8 American, something like that. But yeah, like I said to you, this one is called To the Nines. It was brewed to celebrate Beerbliotek's 9th anniversary. It's number 326, as you can see on the can. That's recipe number 326, is what that means. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. And as we said earlier, this one was released as part of the Lokalt Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget in Sweden for January of 2023. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I've just noticed as well, they've changed their little symbol. They always used to have a little Swedish flag on their beers, which I liked, but here you can see, if we bring that in, they do have this little thing now that says Swedish craft beer, Svensk Hantverksöl. So yeah, I quite like that. I do like it when breweries mark what country their beer is coming from, you know. I think that's always quite a nice wee touch, especially in Europe, because, you know, there are so many different countries and it's cool to try things from different places. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. A 13% barley wine. I have to admit, I am very curious to see whether this is going to be more of an English barley wine or an American barley wine, or something in the middle, but we will need to see. But I have to say, this beer looks like an absolute monster. But that head is going to fade away very quickly, so we'll just have a wee look at it. You can see when it poured to be about maybe 1/3 of a finger, and you can see the colours of the bubbles are this kind of fawn colour there. You can see it's got a very light sort of fawny colour to it. Medium-sized bubbles for me, but it was a little bumpy and it has just disappeared. There, it's just a kind of ring around the edge of the glass now, but the head is completely gone and there's no carbonation visible coming up toward the surface. But yeah, the first thing that jumps out at you about the appearance of this beer is how dark it is. Now, I can tell you straight away, this will be to do with the length of the wort boil. Remember that the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malt that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, when it comes to barley wines, you know, the more kind of brown coloured beers rather than the black ones, they can be affected a little bit colour wise by the barrel aging. But in this case, you know, this one is extremely dark, and yeah, this one's extremely dark, and that kind of tells you. And most of that will be down to the type of malts that they've used, of course. But yeah, this will be a very long wort boil barley wine, but we'll look at it a little bit more and we'll be able to tell you whether that's the case. But yeah, one or two bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, just a few little ones creeping up toward the surface now. But overall, it does look really nice, I have to say, but definitely one of the darker barley wines that I can say I've come across over the last wee while. But let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and just see what it's all about. That is pretty awesome, I have to say. Yeah, this is going to be a big, sticky bastard of a beer. But I'm not complaining. I am definitely not complaining. I love a good barley wine, and somehow I think I'm going to enjoy this one. I think this will be very nice. Yeah, it gives you everything you'd want from the style. You've got a lovely little bit of woodiness in the backbone there. You've got the big, like, highly caramelized brown sugars. You've got a wee bit of cakiness to it. You've got the red fruits. Yeah, it really gives you everything you would want from a barley wine, this beer. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that and just break the aroma down and see what it's all about. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. You know, Beerbliotek, see if you look on their website, they've done a number of like big high alcohol beers like this, but they don't release many of them through Systembolaget. That's something that they really do need to fix. I've complained to them about that before because they've always had, they had a Scotch ale that they released years ago that I would have loved to have tried. They've also got like a, I think it's an ice distilled barley wine as well, number 300 or something like that. That would have been awesome to try too. But like I say, they don't release many of these higher ABV ones through they just don't release them through Systembolaget. I would love to get a hold of some of the barrel series as well. But yeah, the backbone of this beer though, let's go for it with this one. You can smell there's a nice sort of woody backbone to this one. Of course, this beer isn't barrel aged. I'm guessing they probably will have taken a portion of it and barrel aged it. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is lovely. You've got that lovely kind of smooth, almost oaky woody character. There's definitely a bit of vanilla in there, but above that, it's all, you know, above that, it's all about the you've got a little bit of kind of bread crusty character to it for sure, some sweet sort of rye bread, but then you've also got this big, like, you know, brandy soaked you've got a brandy soaked kind of bread with this. It's very, as I say, it's like it's almost like Christmas pudding in a sense. It's got that sort of brandy soaked dark fruit loaf type quality to it, this one. So as I say, a bit of woodiness, a bit of bread crust, a bit of rye bread, but then you've got the thing that dominates that middle of the middle of the nose there is this brandy soaked dark fruit loaf type thing. So yeah, that goes together really, really interestingly in this beer for me. Yeah, just crazy. It's just absolute craziness, this, I have to say. Yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, on top of the kind of cakiness that you have in this beer, of course, within that cakiness, you know, there's a little bit of, you are getting a little bit of that kind of phenolic-y, cough syrupy, medicinal type thing out of this one. But above that, you've got all the brown sugars in there. You get a lot of kind of treacle molasses in this one, you know, that high, and you can smell it. So I've got a little bit of a leathery character to it as well, which to me indicates that this beer has had a pretty long wort boil. So yeah, nice leathery brown sugar in there. You've got the sweet, you've got the sweet kind of caramelly notes above it as well. So yeah, straight up sweet caramel, big treacle molasses, and also that more leathery brown sugar coming out of this one too. Yeah, for me, there's maybe a teeny little, tiny hint of like a slightly dry chocolate in this one. But otherwise, yeah, it's all about these big brown sugars and that big cakey note that's coming out of the beer. The aroma, I could sit and smell this thing all day, but the aroma of this beer is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. But I think in terms of how the aroma goes together, I would say this is more of an American barley wine than an English one. For me, usually, the main difference between the American and the English ones, it's quite distinct actually. The English ones tend to be a little bit more bready and grainy. They can be a little bit more toasty in their brown sugary character as well. And the fruits are a little bit kind of drier. You know, you get dates and prunes and things and sultanas and stuff like that out of them. But with the American ones, they're a lot more oily. They've got a bit more of a straight up sweetness to them. They can have a bit of cakiness. And then, yeah, the fruits are just a lot more kind of bright and sweet in that sense, and I'm getting a lot of that type of vibe out of this beer. But let's have a wee look at the hoppy side of this one then. So, I mean, the hoppy character that comes out of this beer, for me, there is a little bit of green component to this one. There's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there. Yeah, there's a little bit of earthiness. There's a little bit of herbal character, and you've also got a wee touch of a kind of, you do get a little bit of floral aromaticity and also a bit of a zesty grassy character too. So definitely getting some of that out of this beer, that's for sure. So yeah, nice little bit, as I say, nice little bit of zesty grassy character, nice little bit of floral aromaticity. And yet the green component is definitely there. But of course, with this being a 13% barley wine, you could age this beer and keep it longer and longer, and some of the hoppy character would drop out. But I wanted to try it, so that was why we're doing this one now. But yeah, I think that covers the green component with this one. It's quite a smooth green component, I would say, but the fruity side of this beer is absolutely lovely. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of this beer, yeah, lots of plums. There's definitely there's not really a raisiny sharpness to it, but you've got the more juicy side of a raisiny character. But yeah, raisins, plums, figs, absolutely. Black currants, blackberries, I would say, and it is more, this beer really leans toward that more kind of straight up berry and juicy, fruity character. So yeah, the way this beer goes about its business, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, lovely stuff, this one, I have to say. Yeah, aroma wise, can't fault this beer at all. That's one of the nicest aromas I think I've come across on the channel in a wee while, but you guys know I'm a sucker for these big brown sugary type beers. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to take in the aroma of the beer before you get started on it, but I think it's about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is To the Nines, number 326 in their recipe inventory, or whatever we want to call it. This one comes to you from Beerbliotek, a barley wine brewed for their 9th anniversary. So happy anniversary to the guys at Beerbliotek. Hopefully we can come up there and do an out and about video at some point soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Let's try this. Oh yeah. That is nice. I'm going to say this one, it's one of these ones when you taste it, you get everything you should. But then, as you let it develop on the tongue, it just shows you more and more. Yeah. This is quite interesting. It's actually like a very slick, it's a very slick barley wine, this one. And it's not the it's certainly not the sweetest of barley wines either. It really is more kind of slick and things, but it gets sweet. The aftertaste of this one is where it really kind of shows you its sweeter side actually. But yeah, it's actually quite light and quite slick in a lot of ways. But you do start to get more and more complexities out of the flavour in this one, so yeah, I like this. I do like how it goes together. But yeah, this is very, very nice. Yeah. It's an interesting beer, this one. As I say, I think this takes a wee bit of time just to show itself, but I think they have done a good job of this one. But like I say, it's certainly not the sweetest of barley wines, but it's still is nice. Let's break this beer down for you and just describe it a wee bit more in depth, actually. So yeah, middle of your palate with this beer then. The backbone of the beer, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of smooth, just like woody character to this one. It feels a little bit like a smooth American oak. And you get a little touch of woody flavour to it. But like I say, this is not a barrel-aged beer, but for me, yeah, there is just a little bit of a kind of woody backbone to this one. On top of that, yeah, I would say with that woody note, it brightens up as well. Like at the back of that middle third of your palate, it's definitely a little bit drier. Then as you push further forward, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of slightly vanilla type note. So yeah, there's a little touch of there is a little touch of vanilla to this one toward the front of the palate there within that kind of woody character. But then above that, you start to get that little bit of bread crusty character that I was picking up in the aroma. And then there's a slightly, I don't know if I would call it rye bread, but you can feel there's a bit of a sweeter brown bready layer coming out of this one. So yeah, that's good as well. And yeah, you can feel that it has, this is one of these beers that the more you drink it, the more oily the middle third of your palate gets. And this is where the complexity is in this beer, is right in the middle of the palate. So yeah, above the bread crust and above the kind of brown bready layer, that's when you start to get this more dense, cakey type quality out of this one. So you've got a little bit of that, yeah, you do have a little bit of that sort of cakey, it's kind of, as I say, it's like a very dense but very oily, a very dense, very oily sort of like Christmas puddingy type thing in the middle of your palate. And you can just feel that sitting on top of the kind of brown bready layer there. But within that kind of cakey layer, you have, it's just like a brandy soaked fruit loaf. That really is it. And then above that, you start to get the brown sugary side of the beer. But yeah, within, as you move further forward in that, pardon me, slightly, as you move further forward in that kind of more cakey layer of the beer, you start to get, you do start to get more of a, you get a little touch of nuttiness out of this one. So yeah, there's a little bit of a kind of nuttiness in that cakey layer of the beer further forward on the palate, but then above all of that, you have the nice kind of above that you have the nice kind of you have that nice kind of smooth brown sugary layer as well. So yeah, you've got that lovely kind of leathery brown sugary quality, and you have all the you can feel that it's quite leathery. So this beer has been, it really has been quite, it has, you know, these barley wines will have like a sort of 6 hour wort boil to them at least, and this one I think has had significantly longer than that, because you can feel that nice leathery brown sugary layer. Above that, you've got a sort of circle in the middle of your palate, and you can feel that leathery layer. Then you've got the kind of, yeah, and then you have the more kind of treacly molasses type brown sugars out of it, and then in the dead centre of your palate you've got the straight up sweet caramel. So the brown sugar circle in the middle of your palate is really quite it's really quite noticeable in this beer, I think we have to say. So yeah, the way that beer goes, the way that the beer goes together in the middle third of the palate in this one is really nice. But I think it does take a bit of time just to show you what it's all about. But yeah, the sort of cakey base that this beer has, and the kind of leatheriness and oiliness at the same time with the brown sugars. It's certainly not the sweetest of barley wines that I've come across, but it does actually start to show you a little bit more sweetness the further into the aftertaste that you go and the more that you drink of it. But I like it. I do like it. It almost has a very, as I say, you just get that cakey, almost Christmas puddingy vibe out of this beer. But I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of the palate then. So you can feel there's a little bit of build up in there, and it is like a kind of sweet, kind of brown sugary sponge cake or something like that. You do get a little bit of that cakey element there. But then the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel, again, you've got a little bit of a kind of dry or woody character there, but actually the base layer on the back third of the palate is more like a kind of the sort of crust of a cake, if that makes sense. So you've got a little bit of that in there. You do get a little bit of that sweet, almost like, it's almost like a rye bready character in the back third of the palate too. And then above that, you can feel the sort of Christmas puddingy, cakey layer, and that's definitely a wee bit drier and darker too. So yeah, as I say, a little bit of kind of cake crust, sort of rye bready type quality, and then you've got the more kind of boozy, dense, cakey note in there. But then above all of that, you start to get some of the yeasty esters on the back third of your palate. So yeah, above all of that, as I say, there is a little bit of a kind of sweet honeycomb. Well, actually, you've got a little bit more of a kind of light, kind of sweet brown bread in there, a little bit of honeycomb mixed into it, and that just sits above the kind of dense cakey layer that's in this beer. But definitely on the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller, and then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just squashes down and condenses together. So yeah, you've got some lovely yeasty and kind of malty flavours coming out of this beer, which I think are great. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I do really like how that goes together. Yeah, and as I say, malty wise, it's certainly not the sweetest of barley wines, but it shows you more and more complexity the further into the aftertaste you go. I think that's it with this one. This one will show you more and more as it warms up. It maybe it needed aged a little bit more, but I still think it's in good condition as it stands, to be honest with you. It's just a wee bit different from what we've had. So yeah, let's look at the hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there, and it's very small earthiness, right enough, but as you move further forward, you get a little bit of a herbal quality in there as well. And then as you push further forward on the palate, the green component incidentally in this beer is very, very smooth, but as you push further forward, you start to get a little bit of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing coming out of this beer, which is nice. And then there's just a wee bit of a more oily, grassy character around the front curve of the tongue, which I do like as well. So yeah, nice, smooth, grassy element coming out of this beer as well. But yeah, it works. It is really nice in that sense. The green component, as I say, it's still there. It's not madly prominent right enough, but the further you go into the aftertaste, I think you do get a little bit more floral character and a wee bit more grassiness out of this one. And of course, as I said too, you could age this beer more, and more of that would drop out. But I think it's good as it is, to be honest with you. But yeah, let's look at the fruity side of the beer then, the front third of your palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of cakey element to it. You've got more of a kind of, you've got a more oily Christmas puddingy type vibe to it as well. And then the base of the front third of your palate as well, it's kind of, you've got a little bit of the woodiness and a little bit of the smooth bready character, but then of course the main feature of that front third of your palate is that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, this is quite apparent in this one. So yeah, the the fruity side of this beer is, it's got a little bit of English character to it, but it is mainly American, definitely. So on the back half of that front third of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit of raisiny sharpness. Underneath that, you get the nice big juicy plum, and underneath that the drier prunes and the more datey and sultana type base. So on the back half of that front third of your palate, you've got a lot going on, and that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of that fruit roll, you know, that brandy soaked fruit roll type thing coming out of this beer. So that for me is very interesting as well. I do like how that goes together. So that gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah. In terms of the in terms of like when you move forward in this one, you start to get a little bit of a kind of figgy quality toward the middle of the front third of your palate, and then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you get a little bit of you do get a little bit more of a kind of black curranty note underneath, and above that you've got a mixture of a kind of cherry and blackberry type note there, so you can feel that just as you reach the front tip of your tongue. So yeah, that's definitely going on in this beer, but it works, as I say, it works really, really nicely, this one, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. I think this is very, very nice. The fruity side of this beer, as I say, it shows you, in the beginning, it shows you more of the American side, you know, more juicy, wet fruits, but then the further into the aftertaste you go, it does show you a little bit of the English dry, fruity character as well. So yeah, but this beer is like, you know, 95% American, 10% English or something like that. You know, it's in the aftertaste that mainly that you'll get a couple of the English barley wine features. So yeah, but it is very, very nicely done. I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. Just to round off on the mouthfeel then. So, mouthfeel wise, this beer is more, mouthfeel wise, this beer is more full. I'd say it's at the bottom end of full bodied. The carbonation is very smooth in this one. It's a very slick and very clean barley wine. It's certainly not the thickest and chewiest one that I've come across, in fairness, but I still like it in that sense. There is a little touch of bitterness to this one, but the green component's maybe giving you about 25 or 30 IBUs or something like that. You can still feel that green component the further into the aftertaste you go, but that will fade with time. The malt base, as we said, it's got a bit of smoothness underneath. You've got a little bit of dryness in there, got quite a lot of kind of oily, thick sweetness to it as well. And then you have, you've got the kind of sweet notes sitting on top of that. But the fruity character in this one, nice and oily, very sweet, but then yeah, you've got some dry fruity notes too. But overall, a really interesting beer, this one. Quite different from barley wines I've had in recent times. But yeah, I think Beerbliotek have done a solid job with this one. This one perhaps could have done with just me leaving it a little bit longer, but I was very curious to try it, as I said. So yeah, maybe leave this one a wee bit longer, but you'll be on. It's very nice as it stands. So yeah, you will enjoy it nonetheless. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about this one. This was the 2 the 9s, number 326, a 13% barley wine brewed for their 9th anniversary, from Beerbliotek in Gothenburg. Let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Beerbliotek as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point soon. But check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys again very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, cheers.